Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to the live session of the NPTEL MOOCs course on economic growth and development. We already have a few questions with us from the Google Sheet that was circulated with all of you. I'll first take up some questions that have repeatedly and frequently come up on the portal. One of the questions that was asked was about the relevance of purchasing power parity, and also that since we have nominal exchange rates and we can calculate nominal exchange rates to see how the currencies are performing with vis-a-vis the US dollar, then why do we need to calculate the purchasing power parity? In other words, what is the relevance of purchasing power parity? Now the thing is, often across countries, because of the differences in aggregate price levels, it is important for us to know what is the market basket of goods and services that different currencies can buy. So suppose you have a certain market basket of goods and services that costs $100 in the USA, and the same market basket of goods and services can be bought at 1000 rupees in India, then we would say that the purchasing power parity is 10 INR to 1 US dollar. Now, although it is a fact that exchange rates or nominal exchange rate calculations can tell us a lot about the performance of the currencies, you would see that it makes sense to know how much of the actual commodities that we can buy with the help of that currency that we have. Now, generally in poorer countries or less developed countries, the aggregate levels of prices are much lower than that of the richer countries. Furthermore, the rates of inflation, particularly food price inflation, is very high. So effectively what happens is that the amount of goods and services that we can buy with the help of our currencies is much less compared to what a US dollar can help us buy. So in that sense, purchasing power parities can be a good can give us a very good prediction of where we stand in terms of the currencies that the specific countries have. Now, the question with regard to why the example of Big Mac was taken in the course. Now, every year almost the international magazine The Economist comes up with an example of with examples of purchasing power parity, very simplified explanation of purchasing power parity, which I found to be very useful. And the example that is taken there is that of the McDonald's Big Mac, which people can identify with, and it provides the learners a very good base to understand how purchasing power parity functions. Now, let me also tell you that the calculations of purchasing power parity are usually made by estimating the cost of very broad basket of goods and services, and these may range from buying an automobile to groceries to telephone calls and housing and everything. So, and therefore, when we are actually calculating purchasing power parity, a lot of goods and services becomes a part of the market basket that we are talking about. So, and effectively nominal exchange rates differ a lot from purchasing power parity, and therefore it is always it makes sense to look at the conversion of purchasing power parity, and usually, as I have already discussed in the online lectures, that it is done with respect to the US dollars, because the dollar is the most dominant currency. Another question which I found to be relevant that has come up is about is the question of why are transfer payments not added to GNP at market price? Well, the reason is very simple. The transfer payments usually mostly refers to subsidies, or you are referring to incomes for which no real goods and services have been created within the economy. These are government expenditures that are made out of incomes as benefits which are transferred to other sections of the society, or they may be in the form of producer subsidies or consumer subsidies, and usually because no final goods and services are produced against the subsidies or the transfer payments that are made, GNP at market price does not include subsidies. And it is true that the cost of production of goods and services will be less if subsidies are taken into account, and therefore to get the actual cost of production value, subsidies will have to be added to get the actual cost of production within the economy. We also have a question on steady state. I am not sure what exactly a steady economy is the question, but I am assuming that this question is on what is steady state growth. Now there continues to be huge debates on the concept of steady state economy and steady state growth. Now within the neoclassical framework, it mostly aligns with what we call as equilibrium growth, and basically means that all variables such as output, population, capital stock, savings, investment, technical progress, they are all growing at a constant exponential rate or are usually constant. So this is what we mean by within the neoclassical context, this is what we mean by steady state growth. However, there continue to be huge debates surrounding the question of whether steady state growth is desirable or how should steady state growth be maintained. This is a counterpart of the long run rate of equilibrium concept, and this is a highly debatable area, but within the neoclassical framework, this is what we mean by the steady state growth concept. There are a few generic questions on issues such as what is economic development. I would rather want to hear from you regarding the issue of economic development, as this course has by now sufficiently introduced you to the issues of growth and development. I would like to hear from you with regard to what do you mean by economic development on the portal. There are a few questions that have come on the effect of India's current budget on World Trade Organization, or for me to comment on the current state of the economy. I think it is not relevant for the course that we are discussing now. However, if you want me to discuss about this, I would suggest that you put up these questions on the portal and we can have a general discussions on this on the portal. We have a question on, are all the graphs and data necessary to remember for the exam? I would suggest that you follow the graphs and the data very closely, as it would improve your understanding and hopefully will also help you to answer the questions that come. If you have any more questions, you are feel free to put these questions online and I can take it up. Rajiv Chatterjee is writing, a lot of questions I've already posted in the forum and waiting for you to address those in the live session. Could you please repeat some of the questions here, because we have not received these questions on the Google sheet that is there that was circulated. How many assignments will be considered? Each assignment carries how many marks exactly? Please post these questions on the portal. The TAs will get back to you on this. Okay, so thank you for all your questions, and can you put up a few keywords and ask me what are the questions? It's all right if you can put up some keywords and ask. Rajiv Chatterjee, if you could put in some keywords and ask, then it will be all right. Can you please put in the keyword regarding what is the question that you want to ask? Is it about purchasing power parity? Is it about some national income concept, or please put in a keyword and ask. Will online transaction against cash transaction will help in calculating GNP in a better way? See, GNP at market price, as you understand, is the valuation of all final goods and services that are made within the economy. So it does not have much importance with regard to whether the cash payments that we are paying with regard to these products are made online or by physical payment, cash transactions. We are basically looking at the valuation of all goods and services. So it will not have. So it does not really matter whether we are doing an online transaction or a cash payment, it is all the same, because we are mostly looking at the valuation of final goods and services that are being produced within the economy. But of course, if we have online transactions, we can have a better database with regard to the valuation of goods and services, if that is what you mean by this question. That will online transaction against cash transaction help in calculating GNP in a better way? The database on valuation will probably be better if everything goes online, like you have in very developed countries such as, let us say, Sweden, where everything is an online transaction. Sambhav Kumar, ma'am, is there any internship opportunity with this course? I am sorry, we are not offering any internship opportunities. Rajiv Chatterjee, what is the definition of isoquants? Isoquants are something which is not being considered as a part of this course. So this is a microeconomic theory question that you are asking. We have not covered this as part of this course. Why there are different measures in measuring the GDP? The three methods: the product method, the income method, and the expenditure method. Now these are the three definitive methods of getting a proper valuation of goods and services within the economy, depending upon the robustness of the economy. For example, in India, you know that many people still do not file income tax, and therefore a large section of the population belongs to the informal sector. So therefore the income method might give us various kinds of limitations with regard to coming up with a good estimate of GDP. Therefore, in such cases, a product method or an expenditure method might give us a better valuation, and therefore we have different kinds of methods. Rajiv Chatterjee, a lot of theories and counter theories are stated on growth and development. How do we know which one will really work for us? Well, that is the challenge of development and growth, because these are not exact sciences. These are not exact sciences which help us determine what is the path that we need to take, because growth and development are an effect of various factors, including socio-political factors. Therefore, the counter theories will continue to exist, and we need to work at the junction of all of these counter theories to try and see which ones work for us. What is meant by disguised unemployment? Do you mean disguised unemployment or disguised employment? The term which is often used is disguised unemployment, which basically refers to the overburdening of to overpopulation or the excess use of labor force in a certain area. So we are basically referring to the pressure of population on land when we are referring to disguised unemployment. What pattern of exam paper? Please post this question and the TAs will answer this. Kuznets' work are all on industrially developed countries. Is it not one-sided? By Rajiv Chatterjee. Yes, you are right. Kuznets' work is mostly on industrialized countries or the developed countries. The first concept of modern economic growth comes from his study on industrialized countries. And with regard to the one-sidedness of it, yes, it does tell us the story of only the developed countries, and therefore it is criticized. What is meant by for 1% investment in education and health, the return was 43% in Africa, 31% in Asia and 32% in Latin America. How is it calculated? What is the basis of this calculation? You are basically referring to the human development investments made in countries. So, these are empirical calculations carried out by authors, wherein it has been calculated that based upon the data that any amount of investment in education can go on to show that the returns to investment, there is a very positive and significant relationship between investment in education and health and the returns to investment in terms of levels of development. And these are calculated mostly based upon the empirical data that is collected. Usually it is the specific paper that you are referring to will have the details of the variables that have been used. Sub-Saharan Africa, is it a geographical term or the term used by the economists? If the latter is true, then what is the background of that? Sub-Saharan Africa is a usage. I have discussed this in detail in the course in the online lecture, that these are categories of countries that are created for comparison of incomes. The World Bank and the UNDP use these categorizations for cross country comparisons. One 111 countries had done or are all third world countries, and it will be very interesting to know which country is the odd one out. You could go into the details of that paper, which is available online, and look into the countries which are outliers. However, yes, it does include all third world, it includes third world countries as well. So, both Tripathi, how is France's model of development similar to that of India? France's model of development is not similar to that of India. The very foundation to begin with, these are two different sets of countries. One is a high income country. India, as you know, is a low middle income country. So, therefore, the comparisons do not hold. As per point number 5 of HDR, the link between economic growth and human progress is not automatic. HDI basically follows the income. Why it is so? Now, when we say that the link between economic growth and human progress is not automatic, it is basically challenging the income centric approach to growth and development, that if there is a high rise in income, economic progress or human progress will automatically follow. Like for example, you have taken the reference of investments in education and health and its effects on overall growth and development. If we do not make the required investments in basic human development indicators such as education and health, we will not see that incomes will have a direct link with human progress. Some amount of intervention is required at the right levels, particularly on human development indicators, for growth and development to be visible. So, in that sense, it is said that the link between economic growth and human progress is not automatic. You are also referring to Molina and Purser's work again regarding HDI basically follows income. You would remember that we are referring to divergent results there. There are some countries in which high incomes follows high human development, some countries where high incomes follow low human development, and so on. So, there are divergent results, and there is no one set of results with which can tell us very definitively that high incomes definitely lead to high human development as well, and therefore the divergence is very important. There is no empirical evidence that tells us that income will definitely lead to human development, and therefore we need to look at the results in context. Sustainable socio-economic development, then why sustainability is referred by Brundtland's report 1987. Sustainability as a concept was of course taken up by the Brundtland report of 1987, but sustainable socio-economic development or the happiness index, as we all know about the gross national happiness index, was first taken up by the king of Bhutan in different forms. In India, how the economic growth and development took place, if the records are available of the GDP growth of Netherlands from 1580, I am interested to know the same for India. Well, Netherlands as a nation state already existed in the 16th century. India as a nation state is a new formation, came up post 1947. The records of the GDP growth rates or GDP in India, in undivided India, you can still find from the archival records, but GDP data is available for India from 1948 onwards, and you could refer to the planning reports, the Planning Commission reports. You could also refer to the economic and political weekly databases on GDP growth for India. Rajiv Chatterjee, and I also want to know the explanations from the angle of economics, that how the policies like 100 days work, rupees 2 per kilogram of rice in many states has impact on true development of the country. These are basically subsidized programs that you are talking about, and these are also the kind of interventions that governments talk about with respect to bring the link between high income growths and economic development. What are the links through which high income can be distributed distributed such that high levels of human development is possible. So there are this is a discussion which requires your engagement with a number of research articles on this issue, because there are critiques as well as supporters of this view, and this is a highly debatable area. However, the economic literature with regard to this exists, and maybe we can take this up more elaborately on the portal if you so wish. Yes, we will try to address these questions timely. However, the questions you have just posed, I have not seen them on the portal. Subodh Tripathi, growth pole model theory, trickle down approach, which was basically adopted in both the nation. Are you referring to Netherlands and India here? This question is not clear, Subodh. Maybe you can bring in a little more clarity on this question, Subodh. This question is not clear. Thank you, Rajiv. Okay, Rajiv, if you have posted these questions on the portal and we have not seen, I promise you I will look at it and answer you back. France and India. So, what is the question that you are asking? I did not get the question. Do you mean to say that the growth pole model theory and the trickle down approach are the same, and so why France and India are not growing similarly? If this is what you mean, then the trickle down approach model was basically a World Bank model, and there has been very limited application of the trickle down approach in India, and that was heavily criticized, and rightly so. Because the bottom up approach challenged the trickle down growth models, and and it has not really been implemented in India in that sense. So I guess I've answered your question there. The relevant articles and papers are posted for further studies. Yes, as I have already mentioned in the introduction to this course, as this course is meant to provide you a basic introduction to the ideas of growth and development. If you are interested in going into the details of the issues that you have also raised now, I would suggest that you go and read the relevant papers and articles. This will give you a better understanding of where we stand in terms of the debate on growth and development. Also, I should mention that the references that I am giving as part of the course, whether they are relevant research articles and papers, are meant as additional readings and are not necessary for this course for you to be able to answer the questions that come after the course ends. They are meant as additional readings for the course that you have taken up. So, both the whole planning was based on this approach for India and France. There you can see the examples, some industrial cities in India and France. France is in lower middle income group. Well, the analogy between or the comparison between India and France is far-fetched, primarily because France as a nation state existed much before India did, and therefore the whole comparison that a similar model worked in France but did not work in India needs to be approached with some caution. Because industrialization in France had set in almost 200-300 years before it started taking place in India, and therefore when we are looking at the model of development, the historical context with regard to the overall the basic levels of development or the basic socio-economic political situation needs to be considered before we make these comparisons. Instead, they have same resource base and there is no parity. But I hope I am making myself clear here when I am saying that when we are taking up the when we are comparing France with India, we are talking about a Western European country and a South Asian country which has been which was a colonial state for a very which was a colonized country for a very long period of time. Therefore, when we are looking at trickle down models of development as to why that has had some effect in France and it has not had in a South Asian country like India, we need to keep the historical history in context before we come up with some conclusions such as these. I hope you will make use of the references that I am making in weeks 2 and 3 of the course to be able to come up with an appropriate comparison between France and India. You could compare India with Sri Lanka, let's say for example, or Bangladesh. You could compare India with Bhutan and Myanmar and so on, or even maybe with some of the Latin American countries. However, India's comparison with a Western European country needs to be done with some caution. Okay, so thank you very much for joining for the live interaction. If there are any more questions regarding the first few weeks lectures, please feel free to post them on the portal.